Today we are going to find slope of a line, and sometimes we're going to end up having to find the slope from graphs and others from points. So here's the directions for finding the slope from graphs themselves, and it'll just say find the slope of the line, and we have 4 different types of slope. You can see part A here, we have a positive slope. And a positive slope, we call it positive because as my x values are getting bigger, as I'm going this way, x values are getting bigger, the y values are getting bigger because I'm going up. Now, that only works as I'm going from left to right. And you could go from right to left. You could say it's going down. As my x values are going to the left, they're getting smaller, my y values are getting smaller. But a negative and a negative make a positive when you multiply or divide. So 2 negatives make a positive. So typically we talk when we're going from left to right, just like we read. So we call this one a negative slope because the x values and the y values are doing opposites. They're not doing the same as they were on the positive slope. Here they're both either increasing or both decreasing, depending on which way you went. Here, one increases and then the other decreases. Like, for instance, here the y values are decreasing as my x values are getting bigger. Or I could go the other way. As my y values get bigger, my x values are getting smaller. So that's a negative slope when the x values and y values are opposite one another. Zero slope is a flat line. You see, you don't increase at all. You just stay flat. And so your x values are getting bigger, but your y values never get any bigger. An undefined slope is the opposite. Your y values change, but your x values never do. And so we'll take a look at the 4 different types of problems here. Looking at this first one, I'm going to start from the left-hand side and work my way to the right. And before we start, let's talk a little bit about what slope is. Slope, we've talked about in past classes as a fraction, and we think of it as a fraction because it's how steep something is. In steepness, we talk about the amount that you have to go up and over, and we're more concerned with how much we have to go up when we're talking about how steep something is. So that's basically what slope is. It's steepness. And as I said before, we're more concerned with how much we have to go up. So that's why they came up with this little phrase, rise over run. So we're more concerned with how steep. When I say something steep, you're thinking, oh, I have to go very high and not very far over. And that's why we have the rise on top, is because it's more important when we're thinking about slope, how much we either have to go up or go down. So that's what slope is. It's a rise over run. This is, we can also consider it something else. It's the change of y. So change means that you're going to subtract 2 numbers. Change of y over the change of the x values. Change of x, because the rise represents going either in the, well, somewhere in the y direction, either up or down. Rise, it could be fall too. And run means we're going right or left. And so that's the change in the x, change in the y. So let's take a look at this one here. When we're talking about slope, we're starting at one point. And you can start at either point. I'm going to just start at the left-hand point. And this point is 2 spaces over to the left, 1 space down. So that's -2, -1. That's the point. And this point is 4 spaces over to the right and 2 spaces up. So 4, 2. Okay, so those are our points. So we're going in the y direction first. So I'm going up 1, 2, and then I go up 3, 4, and that's it, just 4 spaces. Because now I'm at this level. I'm at the same elevation as the other one. And so from there, I'm going to end up going, oops, I think I said that wrong. I only went up 1, 2, 3 spaces. So I went up 3 spaces up. And then I'm going to go over. So my slope so far, my slope is, starting with the top of the fraction, 3 spaces up. Now I'm going to count the spaces over. So I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 6 spaces over. So I had to go 6 spaces to the right. To the right's positive, up is positive. So that's why I'm considering those two positive numbers. So that's 3 over 6. And now I'll just reduce the fraction. It just reduces down to 1/2. Now, that's a positive number. So we call that a positive slope. And if I had done it the other way, if I had gone down 3, let's take a look at that just for this sake, and we'll just do it with this one. If I had gone down 3 spaces, 1, 2, 3, that would be a -3. And then if I went left, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, so that's a -3 because I went down, and I went left because that's a -6. Well, -3 over -6 makes the same fraction. It reduces down to 1/2 again. So either way you do it, you still get a positive number. So that's why we call that a positive slope. So let's take a look at the next one. Here's my positive slope. Now we're on to the negative slope. So again, I'm going to start with the left-hand point, but if you start with the right, you get the same answer at the end. So I'm going to start here, and I'm going to count the spaces to the elevation of this next point. So I'm going down 1, 2, 3, 4 spaces. So I went down, so that's why I used negative, because again, I went down. If I went up, I'd use a positive. I treat negative numbers as I'm going down. So I went down 4 spaces, and I'll go ahead and write down that number for my slope answer here. So -4 over, now I got to count the spaces over. So I go over 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 6 spaces. Now I didn't go to the left, I went to the right, so that's a +6. And the reason it's positive is because I went to the right. And there it is, +6. So this is called a negative slope because we just have one negative. Just got to reduce the fraction. And it makes -2/3. And again, we could have gone the other way. And I'll just show you that real quick. If I had started at the right-hand point, I would have gone up 1, 2, 3, 4 spaces. So that'd be a +4. And then I'd have to go to the left. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So that's left 6. That's why it's minus +4 because I'm going to the right. So again, it's +4 because I'm going up, and -6 because, again, I went left. So whenever you go left, that means that it's going to end up being negative. So I'll write down -6. And so when I reduce those two fractions, I end up getting that same answer, -2/3, because we have only one negative. So there it is. So hopefully you didn't make the mistake of calling it slope rather than slope, but anyhow, that would be our answer. And so, go ahead and fix this line there. There we go. So the slope is -4/6, which reduces down to -2/3. And here we have -2/3 as well. So we got two more types of slope we're going to take a look at. And here's the next one. So here we've got a flat line. And so again, we call this one a zero slope. You'll see why in just a moment here. So slope equals, well, we count the spaces up to the elevation of the next point. We don't go up. We just stay right on that line. So that means 0 is the amount of spaces we're going up. And then I count the spaces over. I go over 1, 2, 3, 4. Doesn't matter how many spaces I go over, but it still ended up with the same number, 0. 0, 4 into 0 goes 0 times. So that number is just 0. So we always consider any number that we're dividing into 0 equals 0. Again, the reason is that if you try to do the division, the bottom number goes outside. 4 times 0 makes 0, so it works out. And so whenever we divide a number into 0, we always get 0. So that's zero slope. Zero slope's a flat line. And then we have this undefined slope. So let's take a look at this one. If we have, write down again, slope. And here, for our y value, we have to start at this point or start at the other. It doesn't really matter. We'll start at this one. If I go down 1, 2, 3, 4 spaces, that would be -4. I went down 4 spaces. So I'd write down slope equals -4 over, but I don't go left. I don't go right. It's over 0. Well, this is something that you can't do. You can't divide by 0. The reason is this. See, if we tried doing the division, if I put -4 here, or just 4, it doesn't really matter. See, 0 times a number always equals 0. You could put any number up here. Any number. It doesn't matter what number you put here. It would still equal 0 because a number times 0 equals 0. And you'd still end up with the same value. So -4 minus 0 is still going to be -4. It doesn't bring you any closer to an answer. And so it doesn't matter what number you put in here, it just doesn't work. So we say that you cannot divide by 0. Another way to think about it is 0, the denominator of any fraction, represents the total number of parts. So this is saying that we have no parts. There's nothing there. But we're saying, oh, we have -4. Or we have +4 parts of nothing. And you can't have something of nothing. So we say this is a no solution, no slope. You cannot do this. We just put a cross through something we can't do like that. It cannot divide by 0. And so we say we have undefined slope. Undefined slope. Sometimes people refer to it as no slope. There is no slope. It's different than 0 slope. Don't get caught. 0 slope means a straight line going horizontal. Undefined slope is that vertical line. So there's a difference between the two. The next part is going to be on finding the slope of a line given 2 points.